You're watching France 24. Let's go to Brussels, where it's all happening. Ronan McRae is scholar in constitutional law and European law at University College London. Thank you for speaking with us on France 24.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me.
I want to go back again to this statement that was made by Jean-Claude Juncker and also by the Danish foreign minister, that there's no room for renegotiation, but there may be some kind of ability to clarify parts of the deal to help out Theresa May. What does that mean?
Well, I think Britain is in the situation of it's still refusing to take the choice. It has a choice between two options, and there's going to be no renegotiation. They still have the choice, but the EU could give some reassuring words that might politically help Theresa May, but there's going to be no renegotiation. I think that's the key issue. They may suggest that this backstop about the Irish border is something they don't intend to use, and they hope it won't be used, but in reality, there's going to be no renegotiation. That's all she's going to get.
So the script was she was going to go to Parliament today. They were going to vote it down. And then afterwards, they were going to come for this summit at the end of the week and try to think of something. Our correspondent, Dave Keating, telling us that a lot of European leaders annoyed that she's coming to Brussels having accomplished that, not even gone to that first hurdle.
Yeah, I think a lot of European leaders are running out of patience now. They feel they've put a lot of time and effort into the Brexit process. Brexit is actually much more important for the UK than the EU. The EU has much bigger problems that it needs to sort out. And so I think there is zero appetite for reopening the negotiations. Most European leaders feel that they've spent enough time on this already. The legal choices and the legal options have been clear from the start. And more than 2 years later, Britain is still refusing to choose and kind of playing for time. And I think leaders are tired of that.
Arguably, the one European nation that's the most directly impacted is Ireland. Theresa May travels to Dublin on Wednesday. What can she hope for from that conversation?
I suspect very little, because a number of months ago, the British tried a tack of they thought they could talk to leaders in national capitals, and that might change the EU's approach. But all of the national leaders, including Ireland, have been clear from the start that the UK is negotiating with the EU. They're not going to split off. And Ireland has zero incentive to split off from the EU. It gets great negotiating leverage by being part of a much bigger EU team. Whereas in bilateral British-Irish negotiations in the past, Britain has been the bigger party that had all the cards. Now that's kind of reversed. There's no reason for the Irish government to split from the EU.
Is there the chance that her initial threat of a no-deal Brexit, if her offer wasn't put up, it would in fact happen, in which case Ireland would be in a lot of trouble?
Yeah, so the no-deal Brexit will affect Ireland very badly, but it'll affect Britain really badly too. So it's kind of a suicide pact, I suppose, that Britain could shoot itself in the head and go for a no-deal Brexit. And it's true that that would affect Ireland very negatively. But the fact is that most of the time, whenever Theresa May or the British government has been faced with the prospect of a no-deal Brexit, they've always backed down. When it came to, always comes to the edge. For instance, the sequencing of the negotiations, the payments, and then the idea of the backstop, which she did previously agree to, Britain has always given in, because Britain will be really badly affected by a no-deal Brexit, and the EU as a whole won't. So that is the threat, and it's the danger, because the default legal option, unless there's an affirmative majority for an agreement in Britain, is no deal. But I think for the Irish, that's just a risk they have to run. They're not going to get any better deal by trying to do a bilateral deal with the British. So she's not going to get anywhere in her trip to Dublin.
So, Ronan McRae, if I understand you correctly, you look at the long history of relations between London and Dublin, and here's an instance where Dublin has the stronger hand. Is there a danger that the Prime Minister could appear too smug, that the Irish could overplay that hand?
I mean, the Irish, by pushing for an option of no hardening of the border at all, have taken a risk themselves. They have had the EU backing for their position, and that meant that they have a lot more leverage in the negotiations. But it is true that by pushing for a no hardening of the border at all and getting the EU to back them, they've increased the chances that Britain will just go for a no-deal Brexit. So the Irish strategy has had its own high-risk element. And as things stand, there has to be a chance that Ireland will end up with a hard border and with a very angry United Kingdom on its doorstep. So there's a very high chance that the Irish strategy will backfire to some degree. However, it's not clear they ever really had any other option.
Not really any other option. And one final question on this. We're hearing Sinn Féin again talking for another referendum on uniting the two Irelands if ever everything goes south. What does your crystal ball tell you?
Big changes are happening in Northern Ireland. The business community is broken with the Democratic Unionist Party openly for the first time. There's demographic shifts. The nationalist Catholic population is rising, and Brexit has made many people more favourable to United Ireland. But that's a long, long way away. The Irish Republic would also have a lot of difficulty in adjusting to reunification. So that's a decades-long process. A referendum is extremely premature. I think that Sinn Féin is more looking for publicity.
If Theresa May is toppled within her own party, then what happens?
Well, it's a good question, because part of the reason that nobody has toppled her is that no one really else knows what to do. Britain has to choose between a no-deal Brexit, economic disaster, trying to rerun the referendum when the opinion polls haven't really changed in 2 years, or becoming a rule taker, retaining access to the single market but losing their vote on single market laws. All of those options are really terrible. So nobody really wants responsibility for carrying them out. And most of her leading opponents, like Boris Johnson, they've come up with no solutions. They like catcalling and telling her how awful all the options she's suggesting are. But the reason is that was always what Brexit was going to be like. There were always terrible options that the UK was going to be faced with. Losing access to the single market or becoming a rule taker. No one's going to want to take over from her, or no one's in a rush to take over from her, because they don't know it's a terrible job, choosing between various awful options.
Ronan McRae of University College London, so many thanks for speaking with us here on France 24.